All right, welcome back to another episode of the Blasters and Blades podcast. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies, a place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So, without further ado, we're going to introduce you to our guest, Miss Jay Boyce, the one, the only.
Hi.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Jay. I write a sci-fi. I write lit RPG. The Touch of Power series is my main series. There's 3 books out right now. I have another series coming out. My first book probably next month, which I'm super excited about. I live in Washington. I am a wig enthusiast, you might notice, and dice as well. I love dice. I'm kind of just a gamer nerd. I'm also a ballroom dancer. I play frisbee. I don't know.
Frisbee, that's cool.
Yes.
Animation and rhythm with ballroom dancing. So
there's some of that. It's about the only place where I'm not clumsy. Because I'm actually like focused on where I'm putting my feet, I've realized, and somebody's there to hold on to. So between those two things, ballroom dancing is like the one place where I actually am graceful, whereas in the rest of my life, the walls hate me, the floor is out to get me, and the tables and doors are just
gravity is evil. What can I say?
Yes, indeed.
So for the frisbee thing, are we talking ultimate frisbee, just tossing it back and forth? Frisbee golf, which is apparently a thing?
I have done frisbee golf, but ultimate frisbee is definitely where I have been playing since high school. I have played in a couple leagues. I have won in a couple leagues with my teams. But it's actually, COVID kind of put a stop to that.
Well, COVID's very good at stopping things, I've noticed.
Yeah, it kind of put a stop to anything social, so I just kind of like stay in my apartment most of the time now. And
so what you're saying is the enemy team used COVID to take out you because you were such a competitor.
Yes, absolutely. And I moved states.
That'll do it too. So is it as rainy in Washington as I hear?
It is. We've had a couple days of like gorgeous sunshine. So the last few days haven't been as rainy, but like I moved here and I was welcomed with fire.
Oh.
I moved here right at the wildfires in Washington. So like my parents were almost evacuated. Like I was welcomed by smoke. And I was like, I moved here for the rain. I am not appreciative of this.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine that was stationed there when he was in the Army, and he described the weather as raining, fixing to rain, or just got done raining.
Yeah, and that's really most of the time that is it. Like in the spring and summer, you get some sunny days, but for the most part, that's depends on where you're at.
Fair enough. Do you need to go to deal with Viking? Oh,
give me a second.
She's muted.
All right. So while she handles that, normally I would be asking her how she met you. So how about instead, because I met you through Cisca, how did you meet Cisca?
So I was actually introduced to her through another lit RPG author who they were doing panels. It was panels for Last Dragon Con. And she was looking to find an alternate to go on the lit RPG panel, and my wonderful friend told me, Bryce O'Connor suggested that I go on the panel with her, and so we kind of hooked up then, and we've just kind of been talking and chatting ever since. And so,
wow, you were like the third one that didn't involve alcohol. I am impressed.
Well, that might be because I have never had a drop of alcohol in my life, so.
Wow. I don't know what to say to that.
It's religious. Don't worry about it.
It's okay. I don't judge. Leave more for me. So
I know.
It's
and
good.
I'm a perfect DD friend. I can, although I've never actually done that because, the only time I've really been in a bar is at Dragon Con. And like everybody's just walking back to the hotels then.
Well, bars are kind of the state of being of Dragon Con, and
Yeah.
not really, but yeah, they're everywhere because it's in a Dragon Con is in a hotel, so they're everywhere. So whether or not you drink, you're going to probably end up walking through a bar.
And that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bryce and I were talking, and I'm like, I would really love somebody with a different perspective, and I'm like, there are lit RPG. Right or wrong is very much a sausage fest, and more so than Mill SF. And Bryce goes, well, I know just the perfect person, and she's female. And I went, well, if you're using a she, I would assume they're female.
I am a female.
Yes. And so, but apparently you're like one of 3 female lit RPG authors. So
there's probably about 15 and probably like 5 more that were like maybe are girls. We don't know. They kind of hide behind their names, and we're not really sure if they could be a girl.
Well, you never know.
Yeah. So it is that there are a few more, but there aren't a lot of. They haven't done as well. I mean, there are some that are, but it is a highly male genre. So yeah,
that's okay. Sort of.
It's getting better slowly.
You are pioneering and burning the way through. That's why you were greeted with fire.
Oh, thanks.
I like what you did there, that callback. I am most impressed. People are going to think you've been podcasting before.
Maybe. So did you go and how you met her, right, JR?
Yeah. She said how she met you. I'm asking if your recollection is the same. Was it at the Dragon Con, the alcohol event with the con problem?
No, it was not that, and there's another convention that is even more so that. But no, it was in the process of getting to know more lit RPG authors because I wanted to know more about this genre, and so I decided we're going to do a panel, and then I needed to find lit RPG authors to do said panel because that's how you do it. You put the subject matter experts up there and let them present.
Okay.
So, and yes, Bryce did introduce us because he's an awesome author in person. So,
really is.
And
now she's going to ask you this next most important question, and I will tell you if you get it wrong, we kick you off the podcast.
Don't worry, there's no wrong answer other than pineapple on pizza for JR. I love
why we like
pizza.
Cisca. I was about to give you bonus points, and I got to take them right back.
I like pineapple on pizza. So, religion.
Burn it with fire. Burn it with fire.
Fire is the best way to burn things because trust me, acid is not fun. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Absolutely Firefly. I do like the other two as well, but Firefly was actually the first and one of the only like TV series I've actually owned for myself. And it was because I was working at a music store when I was 17. I was working at a video music store, and somebody introduced it to me. It was already long over by then, but I fell in love.
Well, yeah. It was unfortunately very short. Tragic life.
Yes, it was a good show. So did you side with the browncoats or the other side?
Oh, obviously the browncoats.
No Firefly fan ever says that they sided with the other side.
No.
So I just want you to know that there's a certain German dictator who will be sharing a cell in hell with Gail Berman. I'm just throwing that out there. So
anyway, because we're polytheistic here.
Yeah,
I love that. Here's the next question: Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or the Potterverse?
That one is actually pretty easy for me too, but it's the Potterverse. So when Harry Potter first came out, the first book came out in my local library. Those books did not actually hit the shelves for like 4 or 5 months because the librarians were passing it among themselves. And my mom's a librarian. So I got the Harry Potter books when Harry Potter was 10 years old, when I was 10 years old. So I grew up with Harry Potter. My very first email I got on my 10th birthday. And I definitely used it to go sign up to a Harry Potter fan fiction forum. And my first real writing was writing Harry Potter fan fiction for 7 years.
What was the topic? Were you doing like the ship? Was it they call it shipping in the fandom? I'm
No,
I'm
so
not
I
an
was
expert
actually
at this.
just I was making my own characters in the Harry Potter universe, and I was playing them with other people. So it was role playing. It was just Harry Potter
but
role playing.
a lot of good authors that I've met have started out that way. With they used old school MMOs and fan fiction to create I heard one person call it one time, and it may have been Casey Azell. It was like riding with training wheels on.
Yeah, no,
So
and it gives you
she
that
learn
world
about
already.
character creation, writing dialogue, and writing without having to stress about the creation of the framework of the world just yet.
Oh no, and that's absolutely true. Like, and the thing with like role playing with other people was also like being able to see you making choices for your character and how other people decided to make their characters respond. Because sometimes you had somewhere like you're like, oh, I'm gonna take this way, and they're like, nope.
So you were doing more role play than actual like writing your own story arcs.
Yeah, but I mean, we were writing.
It was it's writing. I get it. It's different because it's interactive.
Yeah, no, it was definitely for me. It was more the interactive. I made, I wanted to be writing with other people, and
that's cool. I know awesome. When people think of fan fiction, and that could just be through the writing. Mostly, it's people creating romances where there weren't them,
right?
Or where they want, the shipping. So I didn't know there was more to the fan fiction than that. So yeah, you learn something new every day.
Yeah, that's because you don't get out much, Chair. I love you, but you don't.
Well, I mean, everybody wants to create their character, and that's kind of where that started. Is you want to know, well, what would I have done in that situation? And so that's where I've been over the years, is you want to know what your character would have done in that world.
Awesome.
Fair enough.
Which one was your first love, science fiction or fantasy?
Definitely fantasy. And it's still more my love than science fiction. I actually don't recall which franchise was my very first. But I think Tamara Pierce was probably a huge one for me. Or I just recall reading her books over and over as a kid. And so just the far off world, magical places, and magic in general. I've just kind of always loved that.
So for Cisca, her favorite fantasy was Pern.
And it is not a fantasy.
My brother actually, my first foray into adult was the Dragon Singer of Pern into adult fantasy.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
See, it's not fantasy. He likes to do this. Every time I make a joke about pineapple on his pizza, he does this to me.
Well, some of them are more fantasy than others.
Well, it is. Anne was, and it's funny because she started in romance, but she was a master of taking those fantasy tropes and putting them into the science fiction setting.
Right.
So, but yes, it was
hers are a nice blend. I like it.
So, Jared just likes to.
Oh, she froze for a second.
And watch my head explode. So now we're going to talk a bit more about.
Hold on. So, what was your first? Did you read David Eddings, the Belgariad series? Was that at all?
I did not.
What about the Sword of Shannara? Because those were the two I remember reading.
I definitely did have Shannara. I've got some Shannara books on my shelf too, right there, because I met Terry, and I was.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome. I have a picture of him holding my book. It's great.
That's awesome. You should bring that.
All right, which book is he holding?
Siphon. It was my first one, and I was at a con.
You need to give us that picture. It will become our thumbnail when we post this. That is just too cool. All right, Cisca, I won't derail us anymore. Did you read the bottom scroll bar I put just for you?
Pern is fantasy.
I will change your mind. I will forcibly change your mind.
It's definitely both.
So how did we're going to talk more about your writing now. Since you write lit RPG, do you think of it more as fantasy or science fiction?
So again, I really do think that lit RPG has become its own beast. Because like you take my books, for example, they are mostly fantasy, but with that video game element, you can't take the sci-fi away from it necessarily. And so that's kind of what the lit RPG, it covers literally any genre. You can write any single genre and have it be lit RPG as long as you include those stat boxes. So like I have friends who wrote a romance and it's lit RPG. I have friends who write System Apocalypse. It's lit RPG. There are tower climbers. There are dungeon crawlers. There are fantasy isekai novels. They're all lit RPG. As long as you include that video game element, you can have a farming book, which my brother has a farming book.
So for those who are watching this on YouTube, that is some of what she is talking about. There are literally stats tables in here, guys.
There are literally stat tables. We don't hide the math as much.
Show it again. I've got you on the full screen real quick. That's the only way they're going to be able to see it, Doc.
Okay.
All right, other side. There you go. Okay, you can see now what she's talking about. Woohoo!
Yay! Boxes.
1 second.
Yep, we got it.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
More lighting.
So, and if you read it on Kindle, they're actually colored.
Oh, that's cute.
So, do you consider your lit RPG very crunchy? That's one of the terms I've heard from people that talk about it, or do you consider it more sort of soft?
Okay, so crunchy and light are the terms. No. So
to me, the opposite of crunchy is soft, but light works.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
When I hear crunchy, I think of like an angry Joel Sargent that won't really kill you. He'll just make you wish you were dead.
Works for me too.
So the crunchy means you can just crunch into the numbers, and you really that's where that kind of came from.
So Dakota Kraut style.
Yeah, and so like my new one is set in an actual VR game, and you get stat boxes for items, and you have her profile, and you like that one is what I would consider crunchy. Siphon is actually pretty light because the only thing that where you see the stat boxes is her actual profile. So yes, that's book. Sorry, I got distracted. My book popped up on the screen.
Well, you have beautiful covers, and your covers really do remind me of not even like a video game, but even just like they really, really do remind me of fantasy covers, like a trad pub fantasy cover.
Yeah,
and I say this with love because I think they're
that's definitely my influence on it. My publisher had, when he approached me, he had an idea for what he thought the cover would look good as, and I said, okay, yeah, that sounds like that could be cool. And he sent me, we sent it off to his artist, and they sent it back, and I hated it, and so we sent it back, and they sent it 3 times. I got covers that were successively better, but still really terrible and didn't fit what I wanted at all. Like it was just so like dark and gloomy, and I'm like, that's not my book.
I don't see you writing a dark and gloomy book. Like if I saw you write a dark and gloomy book, I'd probably call you and be like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, and that's like all my fans that had been reading on Royal World were like, "This is not like you can't do this. This is not good."
So I love it. And since we're talking about covers, we normally talk about them a little later, but like what is it? So this is very non-standard for lit RPG. Is that what you would say?
Yes, it is. Mine is not standard.
So what would you say a typical lit RPG cover would look more like?
Most of the lit RPG covers have a guy fighting a monster. They've got your main character fighting a monster. And that's just...
Yeah, they do tend to look like video game covers.
They do. So there's going to be a guy fighting a monster. Sometimes you're going to see the HUD there. And however, there are alternatives. There's some that are like just icons is kind of the alternative. And so there's like Barrow King, which is a big skull, or Awaken Online, which is a cat with a castle, like a tech castle thing. They're out there, but they're much less, and like the 10 Realms. which is symbols. Like, so a black cover with like a symbol or something like that.
So Elder Scrolls style.
Yeah, those are the secondary like lit RPG covers that I would say, but most of them are going to have your main character fighting a monster, or if it's harem, it's going to have girls with boobs.
So when you say the main cover, like you've described what the content of the cover is, but are we going with photorealism? Are we doing it pure like actual digital art?
Digital art,
art
for the most
appreciation
part.
class.
It's kind of anime-esque, really. So just pulling off of my bookshelf, we have Ascend Online.
Okay, hold on, give me a second. I'll put you as
Very,
the solo.
very enjoyable book. I read that one.
Okay.
I actually read multiples in that series.
So,
All right, if you show that, I've got it with you as full screen. Okay.
So there's that one. Then you have, so this is Barrow King, like I said. It's got the skull.
Okay.
Then you have Ryan's book, which, you know, guy fighting a monster.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Of course you would.
It's very 1990s fantasy look to the art. Like not the style of the image, but the actual content.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most of Dakota's. So let me just pull things off of my shelf.
Hopefully nothing falls down and breaks. If it is, we'll blame Cisca.
Yeah. So we have guy fighting monsters.
Oh, that's cool.
We have guy doing magic. We have
I said this was a sausage party, right? Right?
we have goblin guy. He is the main character. He's a goblin. We have a guy doing magic.
I'm liking those.
So, like all of those, here's Tao does some that are different too. His have guy with a dragon on it.
That's cool.
So those are oh, and let's see. This one. Guy doing magic.
With a cool crossbow. I
With
like
a cool
it.
crossbow. So like it's a pretty common, you know, main character on the cover doing magic or whatever.
Doing adventure-y things.
Yeah. I'm gonna drop things. Yay.
All right. So now we can go back to looking at her artwork. So what do you love about lit RPG as a genre?
So I have to say that one of my favorite things is just how much liberty you are to break things. So I really like the progression aspect of it. One of the biggest things about lit RPG, like one of the biggest tropes, is the OPMB. MC.
What does that mean?
The overpowered MC.
Ah.
Okay.
And so usually one of the tropes about lit RPG is that the main character, for some reason or another, has gotten a special ability that sets them apart. And that ability allows them to grow and handle things beyond what the normal player can do. But as far as world building as well, it's that you have that built-in progression, but it's also got that framework of this is a game and games don't always have to follow the rules. You can have a guy who's punching through walls and it's not a problem because that's a game thing and people are just kind of used to it.
So is lit RPG always inserted into a game world?
No, it just has to have video game elements. So like mine, it's she wakes up in a new world, doesn't know what's going on, but she's got a stat screen and some stat boxes. Like that's all she knows. So it doesn't have to. And like a lot of the system apocalypse ones, it's more the game system comes to Earth.
Okay.
It's something within the system or something within the book. There is a system And it doesn't matter what system it is, as long as the system is there. And it's really important to be consistent. You can break things, but you have to be consistently broken.
Okay. So what was your first memory of watching or reading or playing games, engaging with at all, sci-fi or fantasy? Which came first and what was it? Well, we're going to do that next. I'm going to separate that.
So I'm trying to think. My brain just went to, my first thing is like the Boxcar Children were what my parents read to me as a kid. But
I'm not sure that
it's not really
sci-fi or
it's
fantasy,
kind of like magic. It's not really, it's more mystery. So I think Tamara Pierce would be the one that really sticks out in my head, as she's the one I read over and over. My mom got me started on her pretty early. And
okay. And what about your first memory of something in the lit RPG genre? Since that's, well, how new is it? I don't have an idea.
The lit RPG is only about 5 to 7 years old as a genre. There are some books that predate that, like Ready Player One could be considered game lit. It doesn't have actual stat boxes, but it's in a video game, and like Tron.
I watched that.
You know, those kind of things kind of predate it. But they're not like actually lit RPG because they don't have the stat boxes, so they would be considered game lit, which really is just another term. But basically, it's anything that's in a video game but doesn't have the stat boxes, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So, but what happened was about 4 or 5 years ago. I think it's about 5 years ago now. I was playing D&D with some friends, and they sent me a clip of a video. It was an anime, and I was like, "Oh, this looks really cool." And they're like, "Yeah, it's coming out in a year." And I was like, "Oh, that sucks." Like why did you give me something that's not coming out for a year?
Yes, I really wonder when people do that.
I was like, that's not cool. But I had looked it up, and I found out there was a web novel of it.
What?
Web novel.
So it was
a novel on the interwebs, people.
Yeah, sorry. So web novel is just chapters are being posted online as they're written usually, or in the case of a lot of the Chinese ones, as they're being translated.
I have read some of those. Some of them have some very interesting titles.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the translated titles can be fun too.
Yeah, there was one where I was like, I think you need to have somebody who go back and edit your title because the context of this is really bad. It was like, mommy's darling is daddy's beloved. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, there are some of those titles that need.
And you read the description and it was like, this is not what you're going for. This title does not match your intent.
Yeah. So I started reading it online, and I was really annoyed by the editing, because some of them are edited better than others. And I was like, I really want to read this. I want to read ahead, and I'm an editor. So I started getting involved in the community and, passed all of their really, okay, I think they're simple editing tests, but apparently people have a hard time passing them sometimes, because
not all of us are good editors.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So anyway, I passed them. And so I got involved with 4 different editing websites or translation websites that were translating novels from Chinese and Korean and Japanese into English. And for years I was doing that. But so that first novel that I was working, I ended up getting hired on to work on this novel that I wanted to read, and it was The King's Avatar, which is now a Netflix and an anime and things like that. Oh, wow. Pisses me off because they didn't actually use the translations we had already provided them with. Like, they didn't translate stuff. And I'm like, people are going to have no clue what you're talking about if you don't translate things. Like, we gave you the names. Like, just use them.
Yeah.
But she's not bitter at all, folks.
No, not at all.
No.
And there's a manga too.
Not the true passion of a fan. Well. Not at all.
No. So, and then I got So I was doing that one. Another big Korean novel that was translated that I was working on was Overgeared. And also the legendary Moonlight Sculptor. So those were three of the big ones that I got involved with and started helping edit because it was more of a passion project for me. I was getting paid for it, but I wanted to. Bad editing hurts my soul. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to fix them.
Understood. So isn't there also a pretty famous Russian lit RPG that's supposed to, I seem to remember hearing about?
So yeah. So lit RPG started, I think the Asian continent in general started a lot sooner than the Americans got it. But so about 5 years ago, the Russian lit RPG authors started having their stuff translated into English. So like Vasily, I can't say his last name, Mashilenko, something like that, is a big one. He writes Way of the Shaman.
That's the one I heard about.
Yeah, my brother was reading his stuff and he was trying to get me involved in it. And I had gotten my brother into reading some of the Chinese and stuff, literature and stuff, and he went looking for more written by people not foreigners, because he also has a similar problem with badly edited books. And so he was looking for something that, might be written by people who speak English as a first language. And we stumbled upon Royal Road and The Legend of Rendidly Ghost Hound, which is a really cool system apocalypse web novel as well. And so we were both reading that and decided to write our own.
Okay.
Awesome.
And it sounds like there's enough meat here that we could probably do a panel to talk about what lit RPG is and all the different stuff, because I didn't want to stop you. It was good stuff, but we brought you here to talk about your books.
Right.
So we are going to transition into your stuff. And so how did you go from, okay, I'm a super fan, okay, I'm editing it because this stuff is garbage and I want to be able to read it, so I need it to be in English, to crap, I'm going to write my own? Like, how did that process happen?
So in January of 2018, I know the dates. No, 2018. My bad. 2018. My brother started writing his book, and I was editing for him. I started editing for him too. And his writing has definitely gotten better since then. But I was helping him fix some of the stuff that, because he wrote in fragmented sentences that made me go crazy. So I was fixing that for him. And then that summer, I also do transcribing for hard of hearing students in university classes. So I've attended thousands and thousands of university classes with my students to transcribe everything that everyone says so that they can read along. And I was in a medical class with one of my med students, and they were describing something, and I was like, that kind of sounds like my life. Maybe I should go get checked out. And so I went to a doctor and I was like, hey, I think I have this. Can you do a whole bunch of blood work? And they're like, yeah, that's what you have.
Well, congratulations, Dr. J.
So I self-diagnosed myself. Huzzah! It was actually kind of funny, though, because the doctor ended up going to actually had a very similar condition. So, I ended up at the right place at the right time somehow. But that was kind of a wake-up moment for me because I have an autoimmune disease, and it kind of changes my perspective. I had to make a whole bunch of changes in my life. And one of them was kind of just a moment where I was like, why am I not doing what I want? I'd had this 5-book series plotted out since I was 10. And I never wrote it. I kept rewriting and rewriting one book that I was just never happy with. I think I have 150 different starts to the book. And, I would put it down and pick it up couple months later and try and rewrite and restart, and I was just never happy with it. And then I was talking to my roommate one day, and she was like, we were talking because I lucid dream every night too. And so I was talking to my roommate. She's like, you should write down your dreams. I was like, no, that could fill novels. Like, no, like that would be way too much effort. And then that night I had this really cool dream about the siphon ability. And I was like, as I woke up the next day, I was like, actually, like, that would be really cool. Like, how would that have started? And so I started writing, and I got like 5 chapters done that first day or so. And so I was like, well, my brother's posting on Royal Road. Like, I can do that too. So I started posting on Royal Road, and within a month I had finished book 1 and had a publishing contract.
Nice.
So it was kind of something I fell into. I was always a dream as a kid to write, but I had never gotten serious about it until it took off. And I'm still happy that it did, but it's still kind of weird to me that it did.
So she is what you call a classic overachiever.
Yes. And you finally have somebody, this is like the magic week for you, JR. You always ask, where did you come up with this idea? Food poisoning, psychedelics, a strange dream. Now we're just waiting for somebody to tell us psychedelics because Doc Spear said it was food poisoning. And so.
Yeah. Yep. You got, that's one for the record book, but save us from ourselves and ask the next question, Doc.
So, are there any formidable moments that really shaped you as a storyteller? Other than your hatred of bad editing?
Yeah, that is a big one, honestly. Oh gosh. So, it's kind of funny. A lot of these, it's reading these web novels. Most of what's on Amazon for Siphon, Adapt, and Sense, that first series, is really my first draft. Like, yes, I went over it with editors, but not that much content-wise changed. Like, it's really like as I wrote it. I'm a discovery writer. I want to know what's coming next too. Like, I have ideas and events that are in my head, but sometimes those characters just kind of come alive and they don't do what I want them to. And so
I have heard of this phenomenon.
Yeah, it's people think writers are crazy, and they're kind of right because we totally are.
Well, they're just not wrong.
Yeah, and I mean the characters end up like having a life and a mind of their own in my brain. Like, I argue with them.
So I take this to mean you are not going to join me in my war on the Oxford comma.
No,
Dang it. I've got to build my army somehow.
Yeah, JR, nobody's joining you on that one.
The Oxford comma is important.
See?
You editors in your funny ways.
Editors on, and we can debate it. How about that?
There you go. All right, so let's talk more about the siphon.
Okay, so that's not the order in question. Now we get to talk about the crazy fan experiences. Have you had one away from a convention that you want to talk about?
I mean, if they're restraining orders, we totally understand.
So, let's be more precise. Have you had any cool fan art or cosplay?
I've had some fan art that I've really enjoyed. One of my favorite things that I've done is I actually kind of goes back to my cover. My cover, I found my artist on DeviantArt. I was looking for an artist who had drawn glass. Because, Jade visits a glass maker in the shop, and one of my fans gave me an idea, like, hey, this would actually be a great idea for your cover instead, and it would be a lot more indicative of the tone of your book. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, so while I was having that horrible incident with Dakota's artist sending me stuff that it just wasn't gelling with my soul, really, I kind of went behind his back and found an artist.
We won't tell him, we promise.
He knows. But so I found this artist who had done a fantasy piece for her friend who was a glass artist. And that's how I found Sandara. And I was like, oh, I like, this is what I'm looking for. And so I contacted her and had her draw up a cover. And then I took it to Dakota and was like, here's the cover.
How did Dakota react?
He was very kind and he said, okay, because he liked it. Thankfully.
Okay. Well, I think it's a great cover. Has anyone asked about an autograph away from a book signing or a convention?
I mean, most of the people who do that are actually like people message me online and ask me to send them stuff. So I've done that. I did have, it was technically still a convention, but it was a writer convention.
Okay.
That doesn't count, so we'll count that as autograph because it's
probably
not
the one you went to.
It was 20 books to 50K in Vegas.
On one of your 2 forays out into actual people.
Yeah, I did not like people.
So yeah, I was sitting. Well, okay, no, I was standing in line at a hotel in Vegas to get my hotel room key, and I was just kind of there minding my own business, and this couple behind me were like, "Are you Jay Boyce?" And I was like, "You know who I am." This is new. I haven't ever had this happen before. Like, yes, I am. And they started like gushing about my books. It was really cute. And they followed me around for like an hour until my room was ready.
Oh, that's sweet.
What year were you there?
2 years ago. No, last year. It was last year. Or yeah, no, I guess last year didn't happen.
Yeah, I went in 2018.
It was 2019. It must have been 2019 because
it's just 2020 felt like 2 years.
Yeah. It was 2019. I did actually, technically, I was in Vegas during the 2018 one, but I had just signed with Dakota and Danielle, and so mostly it was me and my brother went there to go like actually meet them because Vegas wasn't. It was like a 7-hour drive, so we drove down and to meet them because we had never actually met our publishers, so we wanted to do that, and they were there for 20 books, and we.
So have you found somebody reading your book in the wild world?
No, I think the closest that's come to that is that somebody found my book in a used bookstore because it's print on demand. So it's not like my books are just in bookstores. You actually have to kind of want it.
This is a very wantable book. I will say that.
Well, thanks. But most people are just reading an ebook copy. Most of the print copies there are the ones that I have sent out to fans who've asked me to. But I did say somebody found it in a used bookstore in Texas and was like, I found your book. I was like, that's cool. It wasn't signed, so it was obviously someone had ordered it. And
that's awesome, though.
Yeah.
So because they cared enough about it to pass it on, even if it wasn't necessarily their cup of tea.
Right.
So did you have any weird or funny story you wanted to tell us about interactions with a fan? You can say no.
I have one. Okay. So one of my favorite things, because Lit RPG is such a big guy thing for the most part, I get a lot of dads messaging me. And this is literally my favorite thing ever. I get these dads messaging me about how they have shared my book with their kids. And it is pretty much the sweetest thing ever. Like, they're like, I just wanted, like, my kids have never been interested in whatever dad's reading. I wanted to share with them. And, like, this is something that we've really bonded over.
That's awesome.
It's so cute. And I adore it. And actually, I'm so excited. In a week, I've got plans to go. I had a dad who did this, and he told me this really sweet story about his daughter, and how she's been struggling because of COVID and stuff. And he told me all the story. And he's like, and your books have really helped her, and yada da da da. So next Friday, I'm gonna go up and surprise her for her birthday because she lives like within an hour of me. So I'm gonna get to go and I'm gonna get to meet her. So I'm super excited.
That's awesome.
Cool. So this is the part of the interview, dear listener, where we talk about everything she has written, which currently what is published is her Siphon universe, which we're about to dive even deeper into. But do you want to give us the quick elevator pitch on the series that's also about to be published, you said, next month?
Yes. So this is Lotus Lake is what it's called. And
I've seen some of the cover art you've shared. It's really neat.
I'll show you guys. It's not going to work very well because it's on my phone. But
that's cool.
The cover. I'm so excited. That's the art. I absolutely adore it. I'm so excited. So this one is an Isakai Reincarnation one.
And what is Isakai for those of us who aren't in the know?
Isakai basically is somebody gets hit by a truck, usually, and dies, and then gets reincarnated either into a previous, like they either go into themselves in the past, or they wake up in another world. So technically, both of my series are Isekai because Jade wakes up in a new world. But this one, Ashlyn wakes up 5 years into the past, which is when this new game, Elysium, has just launched or is just about to launch.
Mm-hmm.
And this game is it's kind of it's a virtual reality MMO.
Mm-hmm.
And Ashlyn has spent years kind of being a hermit, but like she's got a fairly photographic memory, and she's been reading up on other people having all of these adventures, and she's put together some clues of like some of really what's the seventh element, the mystic element that most people don't know exists in the game for years. And so she's got that step up, and it's her like getting to go back and redo and really live her life rather than living in fear. Like she's dealing with some emotional trauma.
Okay.
That she wasn't necessarily living her life to the fullest before.
Mm-hmm.
And so she wants to change that.
And that's
all right. And now we're going to get back to the book we brought you here to talk about. There you go.
And what would the 30-second elevator pitch be for that?
So I guess I have a thing for slice of life. That's mine. Siphon is Jade has spent her entire life in a hospital bed, weak and basically unable to do anything but surf the internet. And then she wakes up in a new world with stat boxes, magic, and a special ability that if she touches people, she can siphon 1% of their skills and a stat and keep it permanently. It returns back to them, but she gets to keep it permanently. So she can just touch people and grow. So
is she still infirm in whatever way kept her in the hospital bed on Earth?
She is healthy, but like she's like skeleton-ish to start off with. Because
she's got to build muscle and stuff.
Right. Got it. She has none of that. But she does seem to have been healed of whatever was ailing her.
Okay. So that's really neat. And what is it that really makes your series particularly special in the vastness of this?
I think it's slice of life. You're literally just following Jade as she is exploring a new world. And I think one of the things is that she is very just happy. A lot of lit RPG is kind of, I hate to say it, but edgy emo. Like it's the edgelord who wants to go and kill things or get revenge or yada yada. All about killing monsters. Jade just wants to live. She just wants to experience all of the things. She wants to get to eat.
She already beat the monster.
What? Sorry?
She already beat the monster, the thing that was holding her in the bed.
For the first time in her life, she gets to go outside and experience a rainstorm and, to actually just get to be a normal girl. There's, a slight caveat in that she's been called to the world for a reason. And the world doesn't necessarily want to let her be just a normal girl. But that's her goal.
Is she called to eradicate the scourge of pineapple on pizza?
No, pineapple on pizza is not a scourge.
Thank you.
Jesus, I'm surrounded by heretics.
You know, you like it. You get to be surrounded by women.
I'm not touching that one. We're going to move on, and you can ask question number 24.
Which lit RPG tropes do you think Siphon really hits the best?
So there is the reincarnation, and the overpowered really is one of the big ones. Is she gets very overpowered very quickly because, you know, if you're touching a lot of people,
she's touching a lot of people. That
yeah,
doesn't sound bad at all.
I mean, granted, energy doesn't come from nowhere, so she becomes a bottomless pit of food. Which, you know, you can tie that back pretty directly to I had just been denied about like 90% of my diet when I was diagnosed.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, I want my food. Like,
yeah, no. I think anybody who's ever been on a diet understands I don't care, I want my food.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, I know this is hurting me, but I just want to go eat pasta.
Yeah.
Pasta.
Yeah.
There, practice the push away. Practice the push
cheese.
away.
Give me the freaking cheese. Like, I can't eat pizza. Pizza's been denied to me. I'm not supposed to eat sugar, lactose, or dairy. So, like,
they have
sugar, lactose, or gluten. That's what it is.
They have gluten-free, dairy-free, flavor-free.
Oh, I know. I've tried them, and they are like, it's like eating cardboard.
Yes.
I tried it. It didn't taste good.
Okay, so other than lit RPG, what genre or subgenres do you think that this kind of fits into best?
I would say portal fantasy is how it's usually described. It's going to another world. It's someone from modern day going to another world and taking all of our ideas to kind of a medieval fantasy world, which is another fun thing because, like, she thinks of all the things like, what can I bring to this world and become a conglomerate merchant? Like, what can I make? Like, I'm going to bring the printing press. I'm going to bring bikes. Like,
so a little bit of Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to make elevators. All of these things that, you know, they don't necessarily have because magic took care of some of things. You know, and it's combining what she knows and what she knows how to make, because honestly, I don't know how the internet works. Like, I don't know how printing, like, I know how a medieval printing press works because I've actually like studied it in random reasons. So I know how to make that one, but like, I couldn't make I can't think of the thing that prints papers. Its word escapes me. A printer. It's just literally called a printer.
That's okay. I had that brain fart today where I could not convert milliliters to microliters, so I can understand.
Yeah. So like, but I wouldn't know how to make a computer or the internet. But there are things that zippers, for example, things that make life easier.
That we take for granted.
Yeah. And it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, like
indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing is
I never take it for granted though.
No, never take indoor plumbing for granted. It's that one they do have taken care of with magic, because I wouldn't have been able to survive in a world without indoor plumbing.
So, you've told us a little bit about the character and what really kind of makes her unique. So what secondary characters do you think are memorable and that you might want to tell us about?
Actually, so you've talked about the tropes of Siphon. Are there any, this is relatively new, but are there any subgenres that this as a lit RPG has that this fits into? That. No, she talked about that was tropes, not subgenres.
We did subgenres. She said portal fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a trope. Okay, I'll give it to you. You can move on.
I mean, so there's like 5 big subgenres of lit RPG. It's like the system apocalypse, the dungeon court, the portal fantasy, the just lost it. With Tower Climbers and Haremlit, I think would be the big ones. So Portal
I
Fantasy.
thought Haremlit was just a thing people liked.
I mean, Haremlit kind of is a sub genre. It fits into any of the other ones. Oh, and VR. That was the other one. My gosh.
We're okay, Hamilton. Haremlit.
Yeah, Haremlit. It's its own beast, but it kind of it's kind of like Lit RPG in that any of the others can be Haremlit, but it's its own thing.
Okay, we should get back on topic before JR just
right, you were asking
up
about
on
secondary characters if I liked.
Yes.
So my favorite secondary characters are probably going to be Stefan and Eric, and they are introduced pretty early. They are they're two of the teachers that she runs into fairly quickly, and they become her friends. But Stefan is a spy master for the king, and Eric is kind of he's the head librarian as well, but also works with the spy master. So they're two decision makers who are fairly near in age, but they kind of adopt Jade as kind of a little sister.
Oh,
and I adore them. I have written a short story from their perspective for an anthology for Bryce.
Cool.
And yeah, they're probably two of my favorites. One of the complaints about Siphon is that there are literally hundreds and hundreds of side characters. And that's because when I started writing it, I decided that I was going to have it be semi-realistic. And since I was in college every day and she ends up going to a college, I wanted it to be, there are people who reoccur, and, people you're sharing space with, generally you're going to see them more. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to limit it to a small cast because it just didn't feel real to me. So there is a large cast of there is a huge cast of characters, but I mean, I have glossaries for a reason.
So are any of them the bad guy? Or is like you mentioned that she was brought to the world for a reason, mm-hmm. But would it be giving us a spoiler if you told us?
It is kind of a bit of a spoiler.
Okay, we don't want to do spoilers.
But it was one of the big things is there's monsters in the world.
Okay,
and monster attacks are a fairly common thing. But one of the big monsters of the world are the Mesmer. And the Mesmer tend to kidnap people who have high magical concentrations of blood, which, given all that Jade is doing, she has. So she becomes a target for that.
Okay.
So I will say that's probably the bad guy that's known in the first two books.
Okay.
Okay. So you mentioned that she has a mentor. I've seen that sort of mentor trope is somewhat common in some of the fantasy. Is that a thing in Lit RPG, or is that just something you brought in from your own reading experience? That teacher mentor sort of character?
There are some Lit RPGs. The Academy trope is not. I mean, there's a bunch of books that do that. So there's a bunch of. It's not like a huge thing in Lit RPG, but it's definitely present. So the Academy in general is definitely there. I think that's just because I've enjoyed school settings, and because like a lot of my life pre-COVID has been spent in school. Like I was in a school, I was taking classes constantly. So that's really part of just my experience, because I have spent 30 years well, maybe not that long. Not that long. I've spent a good chunk of my life in school, even when I, feels like I'm still a university student sometimes, because I was doing university classes all the time, even though I'm definitely not a university. I'm not anymore.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the next question. So, speaking of characters, since you talked a little bit about the bad guys already, if your characters, after all the evil, horrible things you did to them in the novel, were ever to meet you in a back alley, how do you think that ends for you?
I think I'd be okay. Jade is nice.
Okay.
I would actually really love to meet Jade because
I
would
feel like there was a question mark in that sentence.
I would want to meet Jade because Jade is a very nice girl who, and honestly, she's an alternate me. If I was in different circumstances, I will say Jade, I have a hard time where I stick a lot of myself into my main characters. And so Jade is a lot of me if I was 17 and had been stuck in a hospital my whole life with a different family. So, you know, there's definitely differences and she's a lot prettier than I am.
You're
So,
pretty.
so you mentioned she's 17. So would this qualify also, you think, as YA, as young adult?
Yeah, well, so like I said, a bunch of dads read it with their like 10 to 17-year-olds, and they all seem to like it as well. And it is clean, so because that's just my writing style. So there's not a lot of cussing in it, and I mean, not a lot, meaning there's pretty much none. So I've donated it to my old high school library.
Aww.
You know, it's my book is when people recommend like, hey, what lit RPG books can I get my kids on? Mine is pretty much always recommended because it's appropriate for them. So
Okay. That's always good to know.
It's not written as YA, but it's fine for young
It's
readers.
YA appropriate.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So what can you tell us about the universe? So you've told us about Jade, you've told us about her mentors and teachers, and what can you tell us about the world itself? Other than that there is magic, what else can you tell us? Since sometimes the worlds are as much a character as the protagonists.
So the world is there a mother and father god have created these people and given them the ability to use magic. I actually tell a creation story in the second to last chapter of the first book. I do that. But it's the I can show you maps. So they're basically the world has kind of stagnated into these pockets of civilization because the monsters have been growing faster than the humans can deal with them. And that's why the gods call travelers like Jade. And that's also part of why, like, some people have a problem with how nice people are to Jade. And a big part of it is the culture that I've set up, in that the travelers are revered as these are warriors who have been brought here to help us. It's reached a turning point in the tide of darkness, and we need something more to push our civilization forward. So that's one of the hard things, is that their civilization is used to these infusions from other worlds. And a bunch of their technology comes when someone else from another world is brought in.
Okay. I don't know why that's that unusual. I mean, there are cultures in the U.S., not the U.S., on our planet now that are very welcoming to visitors. I mean, we noticed that when we were overseas in Iraq. They might want to kill you, but if you're a guest in their home, they will feed you and wait till you leave to stab you, because you're a guest, and that's a sacred thing. So
right.
I don't understand why that would be something that trips people up.
Yeah, I've never really understood it, but they.
I don't know. I would say that some of it's just a cultural difference of looking at it. I think it just has to do with the emphasis of, in different cultures, put emphasis on different things.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, she's in a nice part of town too. Like,
that does help. That does help a lot.
It does, and I don't think a lot of them, they don't seem to realize that. Like, she hasn't seen the ghetto areas, so like there might have been an area where, people weren't as nice to her, but she hasn't gotten there. So what do you expect?
Is she ever going to go there?
Yes. She in book 4, she's getting to see other places.
I always am pleasantly surprised and amused by where people's point of deviation from a fantastical world is. So like dragons in space, you were right there with me. He didn't cuss enough and I broke your immersion. Like it's where people's lines are is always an amusing thing. It's always very personal and it's never wrong, but it's always amusing to me where people draw their line. So speaking of, we're going to use that blunt force segue. So Siphon is clearly part of a series. I know because it says so on Amazon and I can read the words. There are currently 3 books out in the series. You mentioned there's a 4th one coming. So clearly their story isn't done. But what do you expect to happen to these characters? Is 4 the last novel? Will there be more?
So in my brain, there is going to be 5. But it might be 6 depending on if my characters don't
behave.
Yes, exactly. Like I have an end in mind. I know what the end of the series is. I just have to get there. So whether that takes me 5 or maybe 6 books, I'm hoping it's 5, but it could be 6. I know a lot of my fans are not super excited about the fact that I have that endpoint in mind because it could very well be
you could pull an honor here David Weber and have like another 10.
It's so true. I could definitely do that, but not with the ending point I have in mind.
Does she go back to Earth?
No, she does not go back to Earth. I'm not gonna lie. The epilogue also pissed a lot of people off. Because I wrote it as an April Fool's joke. I'm not going to lie. I wrote it as an April Fool's joke for my patrons. Because it has her waking up on Earth again.
And it was all a dream.
It was a dream. But a lot of people are like, does that mean like this is all a dream? Like, and so there's all of these theories about it. And I'm just like, no, guys, I've literally told you like she isn't going back to Earth. Don't worry about it. But I saw people who were like, but she could. And I'm like, no.
So did you get hate mail for that?
Oh, I definitely did. I definitely did.
All right, Doc, the next question.
Okay. So we've talked some about how you do have creatures and monsters.
Uh-huh.
So is it humans and monsters, or do you have other fantastic creatures that might be like neutral or allies? And then how do you go about creating all these?
So
that was a long question. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. So there's the monsters, and a lot of the monsters are just it really is a fairly two-sided thing.
Okay.
However, there are basically animals that have been domesticated that were monsters originally, but they've been domesticated. Like Jade in book 2 gets a couple pets that she tames, that she bonds with, and falls in love with. But They are considered monsters by a lot of people. So a lot of people have like that initial reaction is, oh my gosh, she's got monsters in her hair because they're butterflies.
Oh,
I was thinking like, oh, Jade adopted a hellspawn.
No, they're butterflies, but they're terrifying butterflies. Like you see some of their abilities, and you do not want, like, if they are not on your side, you would not be happy.
So what made you decide to make a butterfly a monster? That I have never seen before.
I was trying to figure out. I don't actually know. I just all of the animals in the world were monsters to me. So I gave them monstrous abilities, and their pollen is freaking terrifying. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Oh, pollen is terrifying. I live in the South. Pollen is just terrifying.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, so there's definitely a two-sided dichotomy, and how I came up with them. That's the second half of the question. So a lot of them I didn't just choose one animal. I did a lot of combination animals.
Okay.
So I would combine them, give them new magical abilities, and then make their names out of Irish combinations.
Cool.
Nice. So, is there anything we didn't ask you about that you want to tell us about Siphon?
I did not think of that question.
Fair enough. So we were thorough. We're going to take that as a win. So
Yes.
you mentioned that these are out in print because we've spotted them in libraries and used bookstores. Are these also available in audiobook?
Yes. All three of them are on Audible. I have my narrator, Samara Naomi, is really good. I've never actually spoken to her, but I enjoy her work.
Okay. That's a good endorsement. So we've covered the audiobooks, and clearly this interview is winding down because we've been rambling for about an hour and 10 minutes. But before we wrap this up, are there any updates about other forms of media in your universe coming out? So RPGs, movies, video games?
I wish. No, I'm working on, like I said, the Lotus Lake should be coming out soon. People can read ahead on my Patreon because they get my first chapters there. I forgot the fan art. When we were talking about fan art, and I never actually finished the story.
Okay.
So I found Sandara because she had done art of Rubia's glasses work. And so I have actually commissioned Rubia's glass to make the glass figures from my cover. And I have them somewhere. They're actually still packed in a box when I moved. I haven't found them yet. Because I wanted them to be super safe. So I Uber packed them because they're glass figurines, but they are the prettiest things. I adore them. And she's been sending, I've commissioned her to do more of my stuff. And so
so you commissioned your own fan art.
I've commissioned my own fan art because it makes me so happy. And she did a bunny corn for me yesterday.
Oh,
and it's just it's the cutest thing. So I'm super excited for the stuff that she's been doing. And she was showing me the blood orbs that are from book 3 cover, and
I will not judge you. I commissioned a helmet to match what my my Legionnaires wore, so I get it.
I just think it's adorable.
I've even done my own cosplay one Halloween. I cosplayed as Jade. I had fun.
Nice.
That counts too. Someone's got to do it. It's a little harder to do Space Marine type armor. That takes a little bit more dedication.
I just had to get a cloak and a wig and butterflies.
Yeah, and then they don't tend to make military armor in maternity for me. So what are you gonna do? But speaking,
pregnancy ACUs look like they're made by Omar the tent maker, and you look about 3 months extra pregnant.
There you go. So I'll have 3 times the babies, I guess. But I just want you to know, dear listener, that we're about to ask her where you can find her. And all of these links will be in the show notes. So if you want to support her on Patreon, find her on all the places, they'll be in the show notes. So check them out. I spent some time writing them, dang it. But speaking of, how can listeners find you?
So the best places to find me if you want to read ahead is on Patreon. It's Patreon/Siphon. Because I didn't, think ahead and put my name on that instead of the first book, which is kind of goes to my Facebook as well. It's Facebook/Siphoner to find my page. You can follow my personal Facebook page as well. jayboyce.com pretty much has the links to everything, which includes my Discord. Which is called Ruland for various reasons. But that's my brother in my Discord because my brother's also an author. And that's where people can interact with me more. I guess that's one of my big interaction points is that in Facebook. So those are my 3 big ones is Patreon, Discord, and Facebook.
Okay, and you can find us on our website. It's anchor.fm/blasters tack blades. You can find us on Twitter at SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Sometimes we even remember to check that one. And you can find us on our Facebook group. It's facebook.com/Blasters and Blades podcast. If you want to support the show and help us keep the lights on, it's buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. And be sure to put in the comments for the podcast so it gets delegated appropriately. And this is where you, Cisca, get to try out reading the exit spiel. No pressure, but don't mess up.
It's my first time.
You got this.
So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us today. For the absent Nick, Garber, J.R. Handley, I'm Doc Cisca, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week, same where, and where we all indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, all things boom, and pineapple on pizza, damn it.
Heresy. I give that 9 out of 10. All right. You guys have a wonderful evening.